Steve Moran here, and I want to welcome you to another Senior Housing Forum podcast. We are at the Senior Living Innovation Forum in Napa, and I'm talking to my good friend John Zeisel, who is one of the preeminent experts in dementia. And I don't even know what we're going to talk about, so we're going to go on the wing, and you're going to tell me what we're talking about today.
Well, I think that taking care of people with memory care issues, with dementia, with Alzheimer's, is going through a revolution. And there's some big shifts in the way we think about it. And I thought we might talk a little bit about that.
That'd be perfect. I know that it's an area where there's a lot of discussion. There are a number of experts like you. It seems like none of you agree oftentimes, and I think that's probably okay though, right? Because it's how we figure things out. People feel passionately about things and try things. And so what are the changes that you're seeing right now?
Well, we've been doing memory care and dementia and Alzheimer's care for 25 years. So anybody who's doing it differently, anybody who isn't doing sort of person-centered care, isn't doing supportive care, is just not doing the right thing. So there are differences of opinion. I think everybody who's doing that and has been doing the same thing. We've learned it. That's fine. What's next? Well, the first thing is, the big distinction I make is between despair and hope. Namely, do we look at dementia, and it's a term they use now more and more rather than Alzheimer's, as a downward slope? The minute you get a diagnosis, you might as well drop out of life. You have no more life in what you're doing. Don't get engaged. People stop talking to you. You can't learn anything. You can't do this. You can't do that. So it's the despair model. And what happens is if you as a care partner embrace the despair model, you're essentially counting the person out.
So I want to stop here for just a second, because one of the things that I hear as I talk to people who are really both, I was going to say who are outside the industry, but I think it would be fair to say both in and outside the industry, right, that people say, I don't mind getting old. I don't even necessarily mind losing some of my physical capacity. Right. But the one thing that I don't want more than anything else is I don't want to get dementia.
Right, because of this despair narrative.
Right. Yeah.
And so every study internationally says people are more afraid of living with dementia than dying of cancer. So that's what happens. It gets stigmatized because of this despair narrative. There's another narrative. There's another way to think about it. And that is that, I call it the hope narrative. And the hope narrative is that you can make a difference in people's lives by the environments you create for them, by the way we talk to them, by the way we engage them, by the opportunities they have, by the choices they have. And that's the way we have to think about dementia. Because you live with, even before a diagnosis, probably 5 years, when you're covering stuff up and just can't remember things. And then after a diagnosis, 10 years or 15 years, where you can still do some things. And eventually the last year or two of life, whether it's cancer or whether it's Lou Gehrig's disease or whether it's dementia, I'm not talking about the last year or two of life. I'm talking about the 10 years where we are still living. And for during that period, even if we can't remember something, we can still enjoy a glass of wine. We can still taste the difference between a good wine and a bad wine, even if our taste buds aren't as good as they used to. And even if we can't tell the difference, we probably can discuss the difference and say, oh, I like this better than that, and feel good about it. So the hope narrative is the first big shift that's taking place, and that is that we all know that it's called YCMAD. You can make a difference in people's lives. Let's start approaching it that way, rather than saying, oh, how do we care for these poor people who are going downhill?
So I want to sort of build on this a little bit, because one of the things that I see in the dementia world, I'm sort of thinking through this, right? So in senior living, non-dementia, there's a lot of talk. We're starting to see a lot of talk about creating purposeful living experience,
That's right.
give back experience. And I think at this point in time, it's something I've been talking about almost since I started blogging, and it's really encouraging because I hear more discussion about it. I'm not sure I'm always seeing it lived out in communities.
It's not lived out. It's not lived out a lot.
It's still more of an entertainment model, but I think we're moving there, and so that to me is very, very encouraging. But my sense is that in the dementia world, that's almost non-existent. I do know Silverado has done some things. I did a story real early on about an event that Silverado did, but it was kind of one event.
That's
and
right.
Can people with dementia live purposeful, give back lives?
So, two things. One is at Hearthstone, we do call them give back events 3 times a week. Whether it's making some kind of object, whether it's paper or whether it's weaving something, and then taking it to the church and giving it to kids, or whether it's doing something and going to a synagogue and helping giving away something and doing something for people. Why do we do it? Because we want to link into the hardwired abilities of our brains. One of the things we are born with is the instinct to help other people. We do not learn, it's better to take care of people than kill them. We don't go around, when little kids see somebody drop something, they go to pick it up and give it back. It's an instinct. It's also called hardwired brain skills. Because of that, and those are things that never get lost in dementia, never get lost in Alzheimer's. You die with the things you're born with. You may lose some of the skills you've learned, but you don't lose the things you're born with. So caring for someone else is so hardwired. Everybody with dementia can do it better, in fact, than you and I, because we've got, oh my God, do I have the time? What's going on? The answer is, it's instinctual. They do it. Everybody does it till the day they die, which is caring for other people. So these give back events are tremendously meaningful and engaging for people with dementia.
So you almost make me want to get dementia.
Well,
I don't know about that, but I mean, the idea that it gives you the ability to hyper focus on these really positive aspects of living makes it a lot more attractive, at least.
Now, I often think, well, what would happen if somebody I love had dementia, and what would I do? So I don't think we're yet at the point where we say, oh, great, I'd like to have dementia. But to be in touch with your, and I know you do a lot of charity work and you do a lot of work, social work to help other people, to be more in touch with that as somebody without dementia, I think is pretty good. And similarly, another thing that's hardwired, another emotion that's hardwired is emotional response to things. And we spend all our time saying, well, I'm not going to respond that much to this in politics, or to my friend who's sick, or to this or that, or to a movie. It's a very emotional. We go, oh, it's just a movie. The more as you grow in dementia, you grow in your emotional sensibility. So that's another very positive aspect of it. And just take giving back and emotional sensibility. There's a few others, by the way. It means that we can be in touch. And that means we can really be in touch with you at the moment, with what you're interested in, rather than saying, oh, you're just sitting over there in the corner watching television. There's nothing I can do. Right.
Well, what's interesting to me is I've had a couple of times where I've been working inside a senior living community, the TAD dementia unit, right, where I've gone and just worked in the dementia unit, or I've had dinner with residents with dementia. And while the behaviors are not normal by my standards, mostly the interactions have actually been really, really lovely.
That's right.
And people are caring, and so it's really been it's a great experience. And I think that sometimes what happens is it becomes so fearful that we don't take times to just sit and enjoy. Right?
That's right. So the Hope model doesn't say don't be fearful and don't grieve when there's somebody who gets a dementia, because we have to grieve if somebody's sick or if somebody has a problem. But we don't let that grief and that fear dominate who we are and dominate the relationship. So at Hearthstone, we teach people how to have that loving, kind, interesting conversation that doesn't always follow an exact pathway. So even in your and my conversation, at some point, you're saying, hey, I want to raise another topic, so you go in a different direction.
Right.
My job, as being the interviewed person, is to follow where you're going. Similarly, your job is to follow me, find something interesting, give it back. It's a kind of back and forth. In improvisation, in theater, we call it yes and. Oh, yes, that's interesting, and why don't we talk about this? So being able to do yes and with people with dementia keeps the conversation going, even if it doesn't go exactly in a linear way.
Well, it's really, the and is different than yours and my conversation, right? But sometimes it's even normal. So we had this guy who spoke yesterday morning, Ron Galloway, who actually will do an interview with. We had technical trouble yesterday, I didn't get it done. But, you know, if you talk to somebody like him who, at least in the dementia scale, you would say is normal, but he's a very odd guy.
Was he the guy who talked about experience?
He was the second guy who talked about sort of the data, and the Judson guy.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
right.
and I've known him for 4 years. I really like him a lot, but he's got a very odd mind. And so he just kind of goes off in places, but it's fascinating. And so sometimes I reel him in when I'm talking, and sometimes I just follow him down the path.
That's right.
And it's really
So
the same kind of thing, right?
It's exactly the same kind of thing. And with somebody like that, we say, oh, isn't he interesting? He's a genius. Instead of saying, oh, too bad he's got dementia. But it's the same ability that you have to do interviewing that you can apply, and all of us can apply with people with Alzheimer's and dementia to have that conversation. And so many people are afraid of it and don't know how to do it and are used to another type of conversation. They stop visiting people. So, you know, there's a correlation between having dementia and loneliness. Well, you're lonely if none of your friends are going to go and visit you anymore. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, as you know, my mom passed away a few months ago, and she lived in a little board and care, 6-bed assisted living community. And her cognitive abilities would sort of come and go, as is often the case. And I remember one time I walked in, and I would often have this big yellow lab dog, and I'd almost always take the dog with me, and she was always fine with him. But I walked in one time.
And she said, where's the dog?
No, I walked in one time, and she said, why'd you bring that dog? And I said, Mom, it's Bailey.
Oh.
She said, that dog can't be in here. You have the dog can't. That dog can't be in here. And I said, Mom, I said, well, if the dog can't be here, then I can't be here. She says, okay. and so I could either really get upset about that, or I just realized that, you know, that's an altered state from where she was. I laughed about it. And in that particular case, I took the dog out, and the community staff took care of the dog. He stayed with them.
So what do you think she was saying to you?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I have no idea.
Think about it. What she's saying is, there are rules here, and I play by the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, rather than say, what's she talking about? Get rid of the dog. I bring the dog all the time. You go, oh, Mama, you are really a good rule. I mean, you really play by the rules. You taught me that. You know, when I was a little kid, I would try to break the rules all the time. Like, I'm grown up now, and I break the rules too much, too. You've taught me a really important lesson in life, and I want to thank you for that, Mom. And then you say, what's your mom's name?
Pat.
Pat, Mom, Pat, I'm Steve, your son, and I love you a lot, and thanks for that message. Play by the rules whenever you can. All of a sudden, what you'd see is she would say, she might even tell you, talk about rules, I don't know. What did your mom do when she was...
She was mostly a stay-at-home mom, so...
Which meant she had to teach you the rules.
That's right, yeah. So, but it was, you know, it was fine. I mean, we had a nice conversation, and once the dog went away, she was happy. But that would have been even a better approach, so I really like that. So, if I'm a senior living operator, and I'm listening to this podcast, watching this video, what should be my big takeaway?
That's a good question, too. Look, one of the things that we do at Hearthstone, and we used to have 7 or 8 communities that we were running, now we're running 2. We were in New York, we were out of New York State. The buildings in New York City that we were working in got sold for tons of money, and they didn't need us anymore. They didn't need dementia care. I think think you want to turn it a little bit more towards.
Yeah, I got to make sure we're.
That's right.
Actually, there we are recording. There we go.
Okay. You want to ask me a question again?
Yeah. So I don't remember what the question was
If
exactly.
somebody is watching this in
Oh, yeah,
communities, what should they?
So if somebody who is an operator is watching this video or listening to this podcast, what is it that they should take away?
That's a really good question. And I think there's a couple of things. One is that if they want to stay current with the future of memory care, they got to stop doing what they did before. And what we did before is say, I've got to take care of my poor friend Steve, as opposed to saying, I've got to engage my friend Steve in life. How can I do that? And understanding that when you say don't bring the dog in, that it's about rules, or understanding that when the person's unhappy, there's something causing that unhappiness. It's not just from inside. So that and that I can do something about it. So one of the things that we did when we closed our residences in Manhattan and in New York City, and stayed with our residences in Massachusetts, the Hearthstone residences, we started an institute, a training institute. And we've now trained over about 7,000 people over the last few years in memory care and assisted living residences, where there are still many people with cognitive issues, in what I call the I'm Still Here approach. And it's a book I wrote, which you may have seen it, called I'm Still Here. And it really deals with a new way of thinking. It's called I'm Still Here, a new approach to Alzheimer care. And this training is not a lecture or 20 hours of training. It's 9 months of training back and forth. We really work hand in hand with you to make this shift. And we embed our care partners, the people who've worked with us for 20 years, and many of them have. We don't have a lot of turnover at that level. They come and embed themselves to demonstrate how to make it work. When it doesn't, you get it up here, but you got to make it work with your hands. So that's the first thing, which is we really all need to go through retraining. We, in fact, go through our own retraining all the time. So that's the first thing. The second is, let's start understanding that we're living with memory care, not dying with it. And helping people overcome that grief and that fear, because those family members are the ones that are causing the loneliness when they don't come to visit, when they don't teach their friends, when they don't know the messages. So the first one is get some training. The second one is read a book that says different things. And there are 2 or 3 books out there that I think when you click on Amazon, it says you bought this book, here are 3 other books they've read. There are some other books that people read, and they have different dimensions of this. And the third thing is understanding that we have to do, if you're an operator, that you have to start marketing this difference. A large reason that people come to us for training is they want to demarcate themselves, they want to distinguish themselves in a community and say, look, we've got something special here and we're doing it in a new way. And I think that's very important, because it also gets the message across to the larger community, to you, there is a different way to do this, and maybe I should start thinking about it, so we can, in fact, improve the lives of everybody with dementia over time.
Well, I really like that, because I like the idea of reframing. We're a dementia care provider, we're a memory care provider, and what we are selling is hope.
That's
is
right.
that this is another chapter. It's going to be an amazing chapter. It's not just about enduring till the end. I really like that a lot. So
thank you, Steve.
Yeah, no, that's very
Thanks
cool.
for the opportunity. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, so this has been really good. Thank you very much for watching or listening to this episode of the Senior Housing Forum podcast. We do 1 or 2 episodes every single week. And if you've got an idea for a podcast, or you're doing something you think would be interesting, or you have something you're passionate about in the industry you'd like to talk about, I'd sure love to hear from you. It's Steve Moran, SMORAN, at seniorhousingforumnet.net.
Thank you.
Thank you.